Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming with us or joining us this afternoon. This is a very special forum, a Q&A with some very special guests. So we're just kind of trying to, this morning's lesson was about careers and God's calling. And so we brought in some special guests, Alyssa and Dorothy. Could you guys please introduce and kind of tell us a little bit about your background and the class that you are in, because you are actually alumni from Blue Mountain Academy.
Oh, go ahead. My name is Alyssa Truman. I'm from the class of 1998. I currently am living in Silver Spring, Maryland, and I work as the marketing manager for Adventist World Radio, which is based out of the General Conference. So that's what I do now. I'm also a mother of 3 daughters, a high schooler and 2 middle school children, and I have a very handsome husband.
Oh, wow. That's going to be hard to top. I'm going to have to really try really hard to top that. And you look super young. So it's
Thank
just like the cards are stacked against me. I'm Dorothy Porowski-Orzechowska. I went by Dolly, and everyone who still knows and loves me calls me Dolly. The class of 2000, so the first millennial class. I'm currently just outside of Warsaw, Poland, at the Polish College of Theology and Humanities. I run the School of Foreign Languages and the AV program there, and the first Adventist preschool in Poland, the bilingual preschool Sunlight. And I also am a mom of 2 little boys.
So you're just awesome.
And I have this hair,
Yes, our hair.
Awesome. Thank you guys for joining us. I know, Dorothy, you're coming to us from Poland, so you think that you said you're about 6 hours in front of us. So we definitely appreciate all of the coming on for us. And Alyssa, thank you for. I think you're in Maryland, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. And I think I just lost Gwen, who is actually outside on a hike, and so I'm sure she'll pop back in just a little bit. And Alan, could you mind tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Hello guys, my name is Alan Diaz. I'm from Mexico and I'm a BMA senior. I'm class of 2020. I'm looking forward to attend Walla Walla University and to become a mechanical engineer for the glory of our Lord.
Amen.
My nephew is at Walla Walla doing engineering, so it's a really good school. Great choice.
Thank you.
All right, and Guinevere, she just kind of popped out. So when she comes back, we'll let her introduce herself. So just kind of let everyone know who's watching. This is just a quick little, not quick, but we're just kind of be discussing some questions that either Alan and Guinevere might have about careers. Also some questions that we had from the lesson that we didn't have time to talk about. Just getting some perspective from Alyssa and Dorothy about how God led them in finding their career. And maybe there's some people out there, you don't have to be a student. Maybe, this particular time you have questions about your own career, or maybe you've lost your job due with everything that's going on. And maybe you kind of see this as maybe an opportunity to kind of see where God may lead you. So this is a great opportunity for us to just kind of, just discuss some of those things and let people know, what's going on and how God can help us through this. So if there's anyone watching that would like to kind of share some comments or anything like that, just put them in the comments and we'll pop them up. I know we do have one. Esther is kind of watching. She is busy, and so, but she did say hi to you guys. So thank you guys for again joining us. So I guess what we'll do is we'll kind of start on this. This first question that we have here. So this is a great question just kind of give you guys a little other perspective. This coming week, a lot of our students are going to be doing some interviews with our staff as part of our vocation program, kind of practicing of how to doing interviews for different positions here on campus, whether it's this health food store manager or a teacher, or just being a regular worker. So this is a great opportunity to kind of get some insight on something. So this is really good for them as well with this upcoming week. So I'm going to just read this off, and then you guys we can kind of start discussing. So this this first question is, list desirable character traits of a good worker that transcend their vocation.
Yeah, it's a great question. I have a staff of about 10, 12 people underneath me, and I'm responsible for hiring them. And I found that in the last 2 or 3 years, I really have a greater challenge with hiring younger people. And so I know exactly what they're lacking, and I can tell you exactly what I think is super important for any worker. Honesty, that kind of goes without saying. You have to be honest. But I think it's really important to be a very positive person. Like if you're going to be a complainer and just be looking for all the things that are lacking in your work, it kind of becomes a poison that will go through a company or a staff of a negative person, maybe like a gossip, someone who's just complaining all of the time. And it really brings a company, a staff, or a ministry. It really brings it down. So you want to be a positive person, and if you enter a field and you enter a company and you see that there are certain things lacking, if you are a proactive person and you look for ways to find new solutions to fix problems that you identify, that's definitely a trait that is very necessary. And the other thing is, don't wait for work to come to you. Be a person who is looking to find work. So, instead of just sitting there in front of the computer and being on social media, maybe watching films because your boss hasn't come and told you what to do yet, be a person that's opening up the binders, opening up the folders, looking through files, finding work to do for yourself if someone isn't telling you to do that already. My best workers are the ones who are able to find work for themselves, and adaptability, because you never know when you're hired for something. You may think you're going in to do a certain task, a certain thing. This especially applies if you're a student who's maybe thinking about going to college and then maybe becoming a student missionary while you're there, or any work that really would take you into the mission field. Even as a pastor, you have to be able to adapt to things that you might not expect, and not think that there are certain tasks that are below you that you're not going to be willing to do, but at the same time, tasks that you think, oh, I could never be able to do that. That's way too hard for me. You have to be able to adapt. And that is something that, especially this pandemic of coronavirus, I think is teaching all of us, is that things that we never thought that we would be able to do before, we have to do if we want to survive in the work field. So summing up, being a positive person at work, being hardworking and finding work for yourself, and being adaptable is what I would say are traits that transcend any vocation.
A couple others I'd throw in there would be being timely. Nowadays, you need to be able to be reliable. We need to be able to rely on people. They need to be able to rely on me. And so, procrastination is something a lot of us maybe enjoy. It's not one of the best work traits, and not really great for life. Putting things off the last minute. I know we love, cramming for tests and stuff, but actually being prepared in advance, because especially with all curveballs that can be thrown at you, you need to be able to be ready for those curveballs. And if you're putting something off, you can't. So I would say that is one. Good communication. When you start working with people above you, beneath you, beside you, you need to be able to communicate with each and every person, realizing what your strengths are, but more importantly, I think, is knowing what your weaknesses are. And then either finding people who are strong in those areas who can kind of help guide you and learn to be better, or studying yourself. I read books. I've been reading business books for years. I love reading business books, mindset books. And then just knowing what we need to, during this whole coronavirus thing here, what she was saying about adaptability, I have had to take my job and we flipped it on its head, and now we're live streaming stuff all the time. And I'm in the behind the scenes doing this. I had to learn it as I went. So knowing how to do it. But, one of the biggest things is there's been research done, and actually the thing that we need are out of the box thinkers. And they actually said what we are really needing from this next generation is not people who are staying in the box as much. We're ready for the next industrial revolution. It's ready to come, and we need out of the box thinkers. And I know North American Division Education Department has been trying to figure out how can we implement that at our schools. So the more you can start trying to think out of the box, like what are ways we can adapt to this? How can we change this? What can we do? That's actually what the workplace is looking for now. But then when you go in there with your ideas, this is where communication matters, because sometimes the older generations have a hard time with it. They need it, but they don't know how to do it. So knowing how to communicate with different generations cross-generationally is super important in today's workforce.
I like to add, a lot of these things, I love the idea of being adaptable, because especially in these last days, I think it's very important to be able to say, okay, God, where do I go next?
Yep.
Because you never know. And I think having a relationship with God and having that trait of being adaptable, because there could be times where even in the job that you're in now, you may have to start doing something different and to be helpful, and you can't, because our jobs don't stay the same, companies don't stay the same, schools don't stay the same, different things change all the time. I've actually been here at BMA since my freshman year. I've actually never left. so I've actually been here for about 11 straight years, and even in that little bit of time, there are so many things that have changed. And I think part of why I'm still here, not only is that God keeps calls me to be here, but it's because I'm able to see the change and able to say, okay, so this is the direction that the school wants to go and where God wants me to go. Then I want to work with that instead of being, I'm stuck in my ways. I'm just going to do it the way that we used to do it, and being able to adapt and rely on God's leading into so to actually accomplish things. And I kind of want to ask Alan. I don't know if you have any questions at all, but if you had to ask one question as far as especially advice as far as where to go next, and especially since when you're here on campus, you usually have time to ask questions about how to go to college and stuff like that. What are some questions that you might have in the situation that we are in now, about the decisions that you have to make for college? And I don't know if you would want to ask or kind of elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, sure. About taking risks. Taking risk. What do you guys think about a worker that has the mindset to take risks? Like, for example, I was reading from Ben Carson. Then once he was a job and urgencies, and he was not the doctor who was in charge, but they received a patient that needed a surgery, and he didn't have permission because he was not in charge. But even though he still took the risk and did the surgery, and he saved one life. But maybe if he had if he couldn't make it, he would lose his job. What do you guys think about taking risks in job?
I think that taking risks are good. I think you need to be cautious in taking risks. You don't want to risk yourself out of a job. But I think that kind of comes to like that out of the box thinking. Sometimes we have to put ourselves out there. We have to take risks. I know people often say it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. And sometimes you have to think that like there are times where that is true. But most of the time, you still want to be able to play good in the sandbox, as I like to call it. You want to make sure that everybody's happy and stuff like that. But I think that risk taking is important in anything, in life in general. I mean, just even, going to college, picking which college, everything's like a roll of the dice. Everything's taking risks. I think some are bigger. I'm a little more risk averse. I will fully admit to it. I'm a little bit of a risk averse person. But I am an out of the box person. So I try to think more out of the box than risk. But I think it also depends on your job. I'll be honest, if I was in his situation and I knew it was a life or death matter, I think that's a very different thing. I will choose life and ask for forgiveness every time.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I thought that ask for forgiveness was like a Slavic thing. I never heard anyone talk about that in English before. Yeah, there's that level of calculated risk, and exactly, what was said about there's a difference between life and death risk. And then there's a difference between taking risks that maybe involves losing time, losing money. But the thing is, when you go into a risk sometimes you have to say that even if you fail, that is okay. Failure is a part of growth. Failure is a part of development. And, sometimes you take a risk if you open your own business. You take a risk if you try studying a certain field and then it turns out that it's not for you. But I think in some cases it's better to take the risk and know than maybe not take the risk and have the regret that you'll never find out. Now, of course, that doesn't apply to everything. I think spiritually that can be a bit of a dangerous philosophy, but we're talking here more in the lines of like college and work and that kind of thing. So, I mean, you take the risk and realize that you might have a loss later, you might fail, but be willing to accept that because you do have the skills and you have what it takes as a young person to pick yourself up and start again.
She said something there that I loved. And it's something that I think that if I could have one thing that young people just totally kind of go for, failure is good. Mm-hmm. Failure is good. We have to fail at things. If you only ever do good at things, you're going to struggle in life. And you are never a failure. Something failed, but you yourself aren't a failure. And understanding that difference, I think, is actually very vital. I have failed at many things in my life, but I have learned from those things over and over again. And all of those little failures were building blocks that got me to where I am now. And if I didn't have those failures, I don't actually think I would be at the job I'm at now. I don't think I would have the life situations I have now. And it's because I chose to grow from those things that I failed at and figure out how can I be better at it. What can I learn from this? Sometimes you learn that you just don't want to ever do it again.
Yeah, I asked the question because right now I feel so attracted to do theology at Brazil. At BMA with the Brazilian students, I had a chance to learn a little bit of Portuguese, and I fell in love with the language and the culture, and I feel called to go there, but it's a big risk, So that's why I asked the question about risk taking.
I think there's a difference between that, though. I think that's actually more of that's a calling issue. I don't see that one as a risk. That's a listening to God's Spirit. And I actually had the same thing my senior year in academy. And I wanted to be an occupational therapist. And I started feeling a calling for religion. And it was a big risk. When I was a female, that was not popular. So there were so many things that didn't seem like they should work. But I followed my calling. I didn't necessarily follow what was easy. And it didn't, my roads have gone so many different directions, like can't even begin to tell you, but like, honestly, if you feel that that's what God is calling you to do, don't ever hesitate when you hear the Spirit's call. That's a huge thing of it. I'm thinking Dolly's going to say the same thing. When you hear the Spirit's call and that feeling on your heart, we follow that.
Yeah, here we have this question on the board.
This is a really good one because I know there's always that question of, is that actually my calling? And that's, I think, a biggest risk for especially people who are just coming out of high school, or maybe you're in a job that you don't like and you kind of feel like I should be in a better place. Why am I doing the things I feel like God is calling me somewhere, but I want to make sure that God is actually calling me. So this is a great question. I'd love to hear some of your guys' insights on this.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in what Alan was saying about Brazil, because I had an AV from Brazil last year and got to know a little bit of her experiences. She's from Sao Paulo. And we also, I had some religion courses with Wagner Kuhn, who I believe he is originally from Brazil, and just about the culture there and our church there. It's very different than the church in North America or the church in my division, the Trans-European division. But sometimes when we feel God calling us into the ministry, many people are so quick to just think that that's automatically like a pastoral ministry. And that isn't necessarily the case, because, you know, you can go into biblical languages, you can go into research, you can go into research, you can go into education, you can go into the health ministry. You know, when we feel God calling us, I think the important thing, if I'm going to talk like from my hindsight, is not thinking that we see the call as it exactly is at the very end, but it's about taking that first step and then seeing where God leads from there, and then that next step, and just again remaining flexible, remaining adaptable, and thinking, okay, if God has called you to possibly to Brazil, that might not mean 4 years in Brazil. That might mean 4 months in Brazil. It might mean 40 years in Brazil. You know, you don't know, but just kind of starting the process of the following. And before you start getting your own itinerary in mind, just keeping your mind open for what the next steps might be. Because we don't know what the end is. You know, only God knows what the end is.
You know, and as far as like how to know the plans and the aspirations come from God, I'll be honest, sometimes it's a struggle. I mean, just being vulnerable. Sometimes it's a struggle. Like, is this my mind? Is this his? My thing is, as long as it's as long as what I'm thinking is in accordance with God's will, it's not out of his will. If I feel an impression from his spirit, and it's not like telling me to do something that goes against anything that he has taught me in the Bible, I'm willing to kind of follow that journey a little bit. He'll close doors. If you constantly pray and you really dedicate yourself and say, Lord, open and close the doors. I'm willing to go down this route, but you've got to open and close those doors. And as Dolly says, you know, realizing that everything's kind of part of this journey. I mean, I'm not working in religion. I didn't actually end up finishing going through all the religion aspect of it. And I worked from home for many years. I had no idea where God was trying to take me. And honestly, there were times where it really frustrated me because I felt this call, but I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing with it. But I just followed the path and kept doing whatever he put before me. And as long as you keep doing that, keep yourself connected with him. Like, spend that time with God in devotion, spending time reading, find mentors, people who you can trust that aren't going to just kind of sway you one way, but will always point you back to God, who always kind of are trying to keep you connected to him, will make a huge difference in knowing kind of how that journey plays out.
Awesome. And I just want to share, Gwen having a hard time joining, so she actually sent me a question that we can kind of take a look at. So is taking a year off to do mission work a good idea?
Absolutely.
Yeah, again, I've been coordinating the AV program here in Poland. I've been in my position for 13 years, and I came as an AV from Southern. Now, I'm not recommending to like come as an AV and never go back, but I think it's an amazing opportunity, especially for Americans that. And I don't know if Alan can relate to this as being an international student, but sometimes Americans have just, you know, they only see the world in terms of their culture, their language. You know, we're notorious for being bad at geography and history, and just getting the chance to get out of the United States. Although there are mission calls within the United States, right? And that's also okay if you don't think that you, for whatever reason, are ready to go abroad. But I think getting out and looking at your own culture from the outside, it just helps you grow. Not to mention, you know, serving God, which usually, you know, knowing English and being American, or having spent time in North America and then going abroad, you have so much to bring to other countries and other people and other cultures that I highly recommend it.
You know, and there's so many different kinds of calls now that you can take. I mean, it's not just like teaching calls or whatever. I mean, there's so many different options out there for you to use your skills for God. Like right now, we actually have a Center for Digital Evangelism in the Philippines. We actually are staffing with kids who are digital evangelists, literally answering questions on social media all over the world, who are doing cell phone evangelism. You know, I mean, you can be missionary, like a student teacher to staff from Adventist Frontier Missions. You know, there's so many options, and I really, like, I've already told my children, I want them each to take 1 year. I just already told them that, like, we'll cover whatever you need, but we believe that having this 1 year in mission will change your life. And I know that's a huge general conference initiative too, the 1 year in mission. They believe every Adventist young person should do that, because it doesn't just change the people you're going through. It changes you. And you see so much more. And I think a lot of people, their career choices actually often can shift after that. I know a lot of people who've gone to school to do 1 year mission who are going to be teachers who are no longer teachers. Who weren't going to be teachers and come back as teachers. It's like, I think it kind of helps you reveal who you are. It gets down to like the core, because you don't have all the things to fall back on that we have here. So you really have to dig deep, and you find out a lot about yourself.
Yeah, I think BMA also has a great experience, because we get to kind of get little tidbits of other people's culture with all the international students that we have here. And it's definitely a calling for some of them, because they kind of see their culture like, wow, I'd really like to go there. So I really think it's definitely an experience for someone to kind of just want to spend a year doing something for God. Because again, this kind of takes yourself completely out of it and just relying on God. Because when you're out there and you're just kind of, you don't know what's going on, you really have to rely on God to actually take care of you, instead of just you having your parents kind of take care of your stuff, or your teachers telling you when to get up. You have to get up, you have to go, you have to do things, you have to kind of follow through. So I think it's definitely a good I don't know how else to say it, good kick in the pants to kind of say, this is what I want you to do. This is my calling for you. This is how you can actually truly find, my calling for you. Because again, when you think about Moses before he actually went on his mission, he had to rely on God, to do these things, and he actually had to experience talking with him before his true mission came about. So I think that year mission is a kind of a good parallel to that for us to kind of experience something like that. So I think we can kind of go on to this next question that I thought was a really good one. What is your burden in ministry, and do your burden and your calling currently align?
It's a really interesting question.
Yes.
My burden has actually always been young people. It actually was even when I was in high school. I was a colporteur for many years, and then I was a colporteur leader for many, many more years. But my burden has actually always been for, I would say, like kind of like 10, 12, 13, all the way up to collegiate. I mean, since I was young, it's weird. And I always felt like I wanted to work with them. I felt called to, it's just, I think it comes back to, I've seen a lot of my friends leave the church, and not just leave the church, I've seen them leave Christianity. And it's a heavy thing. Like, we all grew up doing the same things. What made the difference? And so I've always wanted to be there for young people. And so that I would say is my burden in ministry. It has always been this bedrock of what I do and why I do things. But I think that maybe even more underlying is I just want to help people to know who God really is. I want to be real and authentic. And I think that kind of can work with what my current calling is that whole being real and authentic and reaching the world. I do that with Adventist World Radio. I don't have as much opportunity, though, to work with young people. And that is kind of sad. So I did, even though I travel a lot with my job internationally and here in the States, I did take on being a Pathfinder director with my husband, so I could stay connected to our young people. I try to actually bring in a lot of people from the general conference to come and talk to our young people, like the head of Adventist Mission, or the person from, like, we went and did the Ellen White estate. Like I'm trying to keep them connected to their church. But that burden is still there, and we actually are trying to visit ways that we can Adventist World Radio, for instance, can actually enlarge our footprint with the younger generation. Like, let's get podcasts that are more relatable to them. Let's try to get them doing podcasts. We're creating actually a youth ambassador program where our young people can go around telling our mission stories and preaching sermons. And it's hard though, because my calling currently, my burden is young people. I don't necessarily think my calling is necessarily at that yet, but doesn't mean that I can't be out of the box and innovative and try to figure out how to make that happen.
Yeah, I come from a broken home and a dysfunctional family. So if it hadn't been for the amazing gift of being able to attend Adventist school, I very often say I don't know where I would be today. I had just fantastic teachers at Greater Philadelphia Junior Academy. Eunice Kim, Charlie Reed, Mark Hemminghouse, Peggy Boker, wonderful people who loved me and were interested in me and believed in me. And then came to BMA, Tom Buller, Mr. Edison, just people who kind of just sucked the best out of me and gave me their best. That my burden became just to kind of give back what I was given. And when I came to Poland, my first days here, I just knew that this was where I was going to be until, whatever God had sent me here to do got realized. Because here in Poland, we have a college, but there are no other forms of Adventist education. And that is typical for former Soviet countries. That it's also a mindset. It's considered like a luxury, or it's considered something that's not necessary. So I really feel a calling to open up an Adventist school here. We opened up the first Seventh-day Adventist preschool 2 years ago, which is kind of like the easiest thing to open. And now we've been working for the last 2 or 3 years to find a way to open up an elementary school. So my burden is in education. That I feel my calling is. I hope that what we're doing is in line with the work of the Holy Spirit, because I do have my own children now, and I do realize that I have my own interest here. But I think so many children today and so many young people have struggles that they didn't have in my time, with social media, and so many other horrible things just at our fingertips with mobile phones and the internet. Young people need to hear that they are loved, that they are important, that they are created by God, that they are His treasure, that He is interested in them, and we can do that through education. I'm so blessed to have been able to attend BMA and have that love for mission, and that chance to lead already as a teenager there. I think more young people need that today, and so that's my mission burden. May the Lord lead and make that so in Poland and in other countries in the world where young people need to hear that beautiful message.
Absolutely. And I wanted to kind of bringing that up. Gwen had another question I think kind of fits perfectly in this, and this is a great question that I hear all the time, and I know it's a hard question, but I know I hear when the kids are kind of talking about the colleges, it always comes up, and I don't know how we're going to answer it, but I know God will help us answer this question. It's a tough one. I'll give you that. I don't know who wants to start, but I'll just say a prayer for you, whoever starts.
My daughter actually has asked me this question.
Yeah.
Because she's looking at colleges. She's going into her junior year next year. And a lot of her friends are going to the University of Maryland or maybe Liberty or whatever. I believe the Advent Church has a fantastic thing in public campus ministries. I'm going to put that out there. The public campus ministries movement that we have is fantastic. It's a way to be able to help get our young people connected on these campuses. Jiwon Moon, who is in charge of that, is doing a phenomenal job around the world. I'm going to start with that. I believe our young people going out and being, Daniels, I guess you could call them, in these areas are fantastic. We need people to go out and reach them. That being said, I have told my daughters that I will pay for them to go through Adventist education. That's what I'm willing to pay for. And I'm going to admit a very mother thing here. Okay, totally admitting a mother thing. One of it is they can find an Adventist spouse. I'm just going to throw it out there. It is one of the reasons. Oh, it sounds crazy, whatever. But for me, and maybe Dolly's like freaking out them saying this out loud, but for me, I do want my child to have a mate that they can walk through life with. We already have so many struggles in life that, to me, if you can have someone who you most likely have similarities with, you're already going on a better path. I don't believe all of our colleges are maybe where as personally that I want my daughter to go to. This is being very vulnerable, okay? And I know Adventist education screaming at this thing right now, but I also have to believe that I've raised my child that no matter which school they go to, whether it is public or an Adventist college, that I have given them a firm foundation in the Word of God, that I have given them a solid foundation, that I have put them in a church environment that has loved them, that they aren't going to want to not be a part of, no matter which campus they end up on. And it's hard as a mom. It's scary to know that my kids are about ready to go out to college, and I don't have that same say in their lives. That pretty soon my daughter's going to be making those decisions. Sorry, this is an emotional thing because it's something that I don't think that when you're a young person, you're not thinking it through from a mother's perspective. I know I didn't. I was not thinking how my parents are feeling about this. I was like, freedom, kind of. But as a parent, there's only one thing I want, and that is to see my children in heaven. But I don't know the path that God is going to take to put my kid there. And if that means that God is going to lead them to public campus ministries on a non-Adventist college, I also, as a mom, have to believe in God's call on my child. It is not easy. I definitely want my child in an Adventist school, but if I can see without a shadow of a doubt that is where God is calling my child to be a Daniel, then by all means, I want my child to be Daniel. I would very much rather than be cloistered in a little bubble, but that's not always going to happen. So I personally prefer Adventist education. I'm going to say that right now. I am putting my kids through Adventist education. I believe it is fantastic. I would always encourage it. It's still number one to me, Adventist education. But I'm not going to say that public should never happen either. And I know in a lot of countries, it's not even an option. Okay. That's all we can either agree with me or disagree with me, and we're still going to be friends.
we're still gonna be friends. So I went to Southern for 3 years, and then I took my gap year as an AV, and never came back. And I finished my master's at the Chopin University of Music in Warsaw. So I have something to compare. The first thing that comes to my mind when I look back is debt. You got to ask yourself that serious question. Are you prepared to deal with the debt that sometimes it takes going to an Adventist school? Now, if you're looking at an Adventist school and a public school, and you would be going into the same debt, okay. But the debt is very serious, because when you start out your life I started out my life with $60,000 of debt. That's a serious thing. And we have to ask ourselves about stewardship here as well. That's a huge burden to carry. So I think everybody needs to think about debt. My parents never paid a penny for me to go to school, neither to BMA or to GPJA. Those were gifts that I received from people and worked my butt off to go through school. So it's an honest question you have to ask yourself. The other thing we have to be very honest with ourselves about is that there are many young people that go to Adventist universities, and finally the freedom I mean, even I went to Southern, it required worships and curfews. You can still find people and you can still find the freedoms there that you're in an Adventist school, you're going through the motions, but you're still doing extremely shady and crazy things. It's not a guarantee. There's no guarantee that just because you go to an Adventist school that you're going to stay on the straight and narrow.
Mhm.
That being said, there is something beautiful about convocations, dorm worships. You may complain about them, but you will, value them later. Prayer before exams, that Christian perspective, spun on almost every topic. Although you will have professors at Adventist universities that are not really believers and are not really representing those values. That's also an honest thing that we have to admit.
Mm-hmm.
But usually within your major, you're going to find some wonderful guidance, some future mentors, and relationships that are going to last you for the rest of your life. It's a tough question.
It really is. That's not an easy question. I'm glad you're praying for us there, because I think it's kind of something. I remember when I was in school back in the day. When I was back in school, it wasn't really even a question. If you were an Adventist, you went to Adventist school. Where I grew up, it was just kind of like a no-brainer. Then it kind of seemed to get to the point where it was kind of like, well, do we have to? Like, what if there's other good schools? And it kind of is like, as I've seen this progression, it's kind of hard, because nowadays we're seeing things. I will say there's a lot of times where, for instance, an Adventist school might not even have your major. Okay. So there's that. Like, if they don't even have your major, then what are you going to do? I think another thing to think about is, like, my younger sister, she actually did 2 years at a community college, got all the generals out of the way, and then she moved. Then you can move to an Adventist college.
The other way around also. You could do your bachelor's and then go ahead and do a master's at an Adventist college.
So there's a lot of, like, there's some different ways to work it. And there's ways, you can kind of like save money a little bit that way. And so it does kind of, there's something you want to think about, though, is it actually can mess with scholarships. Because the scholarship, this is maybe getting into a lot of details here, but wherever you go your freshman year, that's actually kind of how your scholarships generally come. So, like, with Adventist schools, you might get a leadership scholarship, we'll say. Well, that's not necessarily going to carry over if you went to a community college. Those scholarships aren't going to come to the Adventist school. But there are scholarships for Adventists who come out of a public setting that go into an Adventist school. They actually get special scholarships for that. I would explore these things. Money does matter, because my parents didn't pay for my education either. I worked my tail off too. It's like it does make a difference. But yeah, that was low. Come on. What an easier question.
I'll try. All right, so this one came from the lesson as well, and she talking about finances. I think this was pretty important, because this is a lot of questions a lot of people have. As far as I know, whenever we had like career day or something like that, we had people coming on campus. One of the questions that every single person always asks is, how much money do you make, and how soon can I make it? So this is like one of those questions that it's a question. It has to be, it's going to be asked. So how do you balance the need for financial stability with your burden for ministry? And what I love about this question is that it brings this idea of ministry in your workplace. And I think a lot of people kind of forget that, when they go to work, maybe it could be a ministry in some way or another. And I think that's really important for us to think about. How does God provide for us financially that I don't know how else to explain it, as far as it not being that big a deal. And that's very hard for some people to say, especially when you're coming out of with $60,000 worth of debt. How do you have that mindset of, oh, I don't have to worry about it because God's going to take care of it? I mean, that's a huge thing to try and cope with. I came out of Blue Mountain Academy actually owing money. So I actually stayed on an extra year to pay off my debt from Blue Mountain Academy, which is part of the reason why I'm still here as being a staff member, because I wanted to make sure I could give opportunities for kids to not be in the same position that I was in. So for me right now, where I don't have school debt, it's a little bit easier for me to kind of take that. But for someone from like you guys who had the debt, and you kind of think to yourself, so how do I build on, being financially stable, but also having a ministry? Because it always overlaps, I think, for some of us in our minds.
I will say that financial stability was actually a very big deal to me. My parents were in debt all my life growing up. They never had money. We actually grew up very, very poor. Adventist education was a huge blessing, and it was truly a gift. My grandmother invested some money, and then I worked every single summer and every single school year. I literally have not stopped working since, let's see here, the summer before my freshman year in academy. There's not a lot of kids who could say that. I worked all the time. But I'm actually a big fan of Dave Ramsey. I'm just going to point that out.
Yeah.
I abhor debt. I abhor debt. And one of the things, like when I first got married, I chose to decide that we would be debt free as much as we could be in our life, because I'd never wanted that hanging over my head. So one thing to balance that, both Dolly, Dolly, you're a church employee, correct? So Dolly and I are not making a lot of money. So you can ask us, but we're on the same church pay scale as everybody else. So I work at the general conference, but I'm going to tell you, there's ministry needs at the general conference. So here I am, and I don't make a ton of money. I'm a church employee. But the thing is, we've realized that there's a lot of things I don't need in life. My husband, we never had cable TV. Like, there's things you can give up. You don't need them. We never went on crazy vacations. We always knew like what were the most important things. So we always really worked on the balancing of the budget. So I know we want this like $100,000, $200,000 a year job, with like bonuses and all this. Great. I'm glad some people get there. A lot of us don't. And I'm going to tell you, generally, if you're going to go into ministry, that's not what your pay is going to be. But for me, I found financial stability by also choosing what really mattered. And so we just were aggressive at paying off our debt. We followed Dave Ramsey's baby steps, and we did step 1, step 2. We got to the point where we were on step 7. We paid off our house. We had done everything, and now we moved, and now we're paying off another house, but that's okay. So the one thing I would say is learn how to live within your means. That will help the burden of ministry. Learn to live within your means. Just because you have a credit card, we use a credit card, which is not a Dave Ramsey thing. Totally going to admit it. The difference is I pay it off every month. I just use it because it's the ease of it. But I pay it off every month. And the moment that I can't pay it off, I will not use my credit card. That's just how it is with me. But I learned how to live within my means. I don't need to have extra. And the other thing is, we actually even talk as a family about how can we be a blessing with our money. We had a family stewardship council where we all decided which ministries do we want to bless this year. Like, and then we let our kids actually pick dollar amounts without actually telling them how much we had. And then when we got to the end, I was like, well, this is over what we planned. And like, oh, should we give less? I'm like, no, now we get to see how God can work. I think that we need to realize that I don't have to have as much because I also want to help the world. And I think that it's just realizing that we don't need all the things we think we need. We really don't.
Yeah, I think all of the things that Alyssa was saying, they're so American. This notion of we're working, we have the debt, we live outside of our meals. I don't know, Alan, how much that applies to you, because I honestly do not know hardly anything about culture in Mexico, how families function in Mexico, or anything like that. But I do know, looking outside in, that this notion of working as a teenager and working while you're studying, and this is so American. I also think it's it's so Adventist. It's to think that like not earning very much and not having very much, that this is, this kind of poor pious life is pleasing to the Lord. And that is not necessarily the case. I think, Alan, if speaking to you, if you're considering going into theology, and if that might lead you into becoming a pastor, pastors do not earn very much money. I mean, there are some benefits. You usually get housing provided, although sometimes the housing is questionable. The retirement is usually pretty good. Health insurance is usually pretty good. But if you're thinking, and this would be then to anybody, going into a field that might not earn very much, like if you're considering being a church worker, you want to kind of counteract that, and think proactively. Like, can you invest in real estate? Can you have another skill, kind of like a side hustle somehow? Maybe selling things on Amazon. Like maybe an Etsy shop, or I don't know, other things that come to your mind, but kind of just this financial stability. And I think that there are a lot of people who can talk to you about that now during this time of the pandemic. People that have lost their jobs, are in a financial hardship. And I had this dream of being a music teacher and being an opera singer and that kind of stuff, and kind of looking back later, and thinking like that wasn't really realistic. When it now, as a person who's about to enter my 40s, thinking that, yeah, I would really like to own something, but having these kind of big dreams on the one hand that weren't very practical, and on the other hand, always being a church employee and kind of focusing on ministry, not having that much to show for it, and paying off that $60,000 debt in dollars when I earn a different currency. I think God wants us to also be able to bless other people financially. He doesn't expect us to be poor. He expects us to be wise. And so, I think, Alan, if you're not, American, you might have a different, because sometimes, again, Americans just think debt is normal. Paying all this money for education, this is normal. Working my butt off from the age 15 and up is normal. It's not necessarily normal.
Yeah. Well, in Mexico, or at least from my city, many people we do work and study at the same time. Actually, many of our young people, we do canvassing every summer, during 2 months, so we can be able to pay our tuition. And about college, one I mean college in America, one US dollar is 25 Mexican pesos. So what I was talking to a pastor, and I told him, well, pastor, I would love to serve the Lord as an engineer in America, and later on, when I'm able to stand by myself, and then I would like to be a missionary in Africa. But I don't know if I'm gonna make it, because it's too high, the price in America. So he told me to, first of all, to leave it on God's hands, and also to look for a college. Then it's not that expensive, and that's one of the reasons that encourages me to go down to Brazil, because it's way cheaper, and also because I think that having the experience of being 1 year in America, it helped me to grow. I mean, on my mindset, and also having the experience of being in other country will help me to keep growing. And I admire a lot that then right now, Mrs. Porowski. How do you say this? I'm sorry.
You just call
Well,
me Dorothy.
okay. That you work in other country, and that Mrs. Truman, that now you work in the General Conference, because you have relations with people with many countries. So that's something that I admired a lot. And so, about money, about the pastor, I think that maybe if I start from the bottom, like keeping my eyes on then Jesus is coming soon, it doesn't really matter that much. Then at the beginning, I would not have that much income, but having the pleasure of serving the Lord, or knowing that somebody is going to baptize because of what I'm doing, it's like if I will be more paid than somebody who is not doing something for the ministry. I don't know.
Yeah, if I can jump in here though, Alan, what you're saying is very noble, but you want to be able to serve the Lord your whole life. And sometimes when you're young, you have so much energy. Alyssa and I can kind of say like 20 years down the road, you're still going to feel young.
We
You're
totally-
still you're
totally-
still gonna want to serve, but you don't want to be burnt out. And
Yeah.
I, at this point in my career, I feel a little burnt out. I'm kind of tired of this, and so you want to also pace yourself so that you still have that zeal, that energy, because again, in 20 years, Alan, 30 years, you're still going to feel young and you're still going to want to serve, but you don't want to make yourself a martyr. And then kind of 15, 20 years into your service, you still have 20 years of work ahead of you before retirement, and you're just like, I'm done. I'm done. So pace yourself.
And Alan, I think you said you had a question that you'd like to ask them. I want to make sure we get all your questions, unless you already asked it. I don't know.
Yeah, well, my question is kind of out of the topic, but if you had the chance to go back in time to your senior year, to your graduation year, what would you do different?
Yeah, someone else actually asked that same question. If you were high schooler again, what would you have done differently with all the knowledge I have?
Yeah.
I'll let you go first.
Thanks.
Because I'm saying
I think I wouldn't have double majored in music education. I think it although I on the other hand, all of the knowledge I got from my music professors, I had wonderful professors that really guided me. I especially think the huge influence that Bruce Ashton down at Southern had on me, like in a spiritual way, really, really shaping my views on a lot of things. But it wasn't super practical. Like it just wasn't very practical. But you were talking about graduation. And I think up until that point, since I went to BMA anyway, and I tanked all the money into that, I don't think I would have changed a thing. My days at BMA were great. I was a very good girl. I didn't do naughty things. I did one naughty thing. Like I snuck out of the dorm the night before graduation, but my parents knew about it, and my boyfriend's parents knew about it. And so it was kind of like nothing naughty if your parents knew about it. And I just had such a great time there that I wouldn't have changed a thing. I wouldn't have up till that moment.
if we're talking about just if I was a high school, what would I have done differently? I would have just enjoyed high school more. I wouldn't have stressed about what was coming next, because honestly, you're going to be paying really quickly for toilet paper and food and all of these things. I mean, I'm just being honest. It's like enjoy the moments that you have, because this is the end of childhood. I know it sounds kind of cliche or whatever, but I was a lot like her. I was not really a naughty girl. I actually never snuck out of the dorm, but I did ask the dean if I could, and she didn't give me permission, so I couldn't. So I was a good kid, but I think if I were to pick one thing, just like one thing that I could have thought through, it would have been to not allow myself to procrastinate, to learn not to procrastinate better in high school, because I still semi-struggle with it as an adult. And if I had kind of tried to encourage myself to have some better habits, then they would have lasted me a little longer, maybe. So maybe if I could encourage one thing is like, just don't procrastinate quite so much. I know that you can kind of get away with it. We can kind of sweet talk our teachers, but it gets harder in the real world. So maybe not procrastinate and be braver and bolder about my faith. Even though I was at an Adventist school, I actually remember being called Miss Ellen White. And it's kind of like a hurtful thing. Like, so during the summer, I would call Porter, and I was actually considered really, really liberal in the call Porter circles, which is funny. And then I would go to BMA, and they would call me Miss Ellen White. So I actually decided I must be somewhere in the middle, which means I'm balanced. So I was good with it. But but like I remember like feeling sometimes like nervous to stand up for things that maybe I wanted to, because I didn't want to be that goody. But really, honestly, in the end, I'd rather have stood up for something than not stood for anything at all. So I don't know if those were, and those might be the two things I could give you guys. If you're a high schooler and you're watching this, just, don't take yourself too seriously. Be willing to stand up. It's okay to stand up. It's okay because there's others around you who want to stand up and are too scared to do it. They just need someone to do it first. Be a leader. Be a real leader.
Yeah, I would say also take your academics really seriously. Like I think if I could go back, I would have tried to take my academics more seriously. And my problem was I was afraid to ask for help because I didn't want to look stupid like I did, compared to my class members. And that was especially coming from like GPJA and then jumping into junior and senior year where there was a difference in program. So Alan, you might be able to relate to that if you've done just 1 year at BMA. Yeah, because that's what I've understood, right? You've done 1 year at BMA.
Only 1 year.
Just taking academics more seriously because so many other schools and countries around the world, academics is really important. And just like not being willing to settle for lower marks and again, like not procrastinating, not putting it off, like just really giving your best when it comes to academics because you're at school to learn.
Well, and another thing, you're paying. If you're at BMA, you're paying to learn. So you're paying a lot of money. So like I actually graduated with like a 3.9 something. Like I had really, really good grades.
Wow.
The reason why was because I knew I worked every summer so I could have the privilege to go to BMA. I went to school out of our conference and out of our union, which meant I got no financial conference union help. So for me, it was like I was making a huge sacrifice and my grandmother was paying. I wanted that for myself. I didn't want to put money into something I didn't value. And I will tell you this too. Your grades in a way matter more in high school than they do in college. And this is why high school determined your scholarship for college. Okay. Yeah. You could be first in your class at Walla Walla, or you could be 80th year in class at Walla Walla, but you also got the same engineering degree. Okay. Now I'm not saying that like you shouldn't still strive for good grades and like whatever, but your grades actually matter more. Your GPA and all that matter more for scholarships. So if we're talking about the whole financial stability and all that, if you are thinking Adventist college, honestly, grades really matter. So sorry for those of you who let's hear this. And they start mattering your freshman year. So if you're a freshman or a sophomore watching this, actually you have to start your freshman year. You can't just all of a sudden decide your senior year, I'm going to have good grades and get a 4.0 you that 1 year and have 2.0s the rest of the time.
Yeah, I have to definitely agree. I honestly was actually probably just like you guys. I think I had perfect attendance at least 2 or 3 times. And some of it I was just like, wait, really? I thought I had a doctor's appointment. Wouldn't that have ruined it or something like that? So it's definitely, but I would have to say, I think definitely I wish I had, spent more time, especially in the earlier part, like a freshman year. I didn't really care that much about my grades. But I wish I had cared a lot more when I was first starting with my grades, because near the end, I was just kind of thinking about, I need to get scholarships because there's no way I'm going to be able to pay for college. And I'm kind of looking at my GPA. I'm like, man, if I had just done a little bit better, my freshman year, I could have bumped up the GPA a little bit higher. And I think, again, talking about, procrastination, I feel like I've kind of perfected the art of procrastination to a point where I know exactly how much time I need to get something done, like exactly. So it's just one of those, I wish I had, put more effort in that for sure. So yeah, sure, I was at class every single time, on time for, whatever, but I wish I had spent more time actually getting stuff done. But if I were to change, anything as far as the experience, I definitely would have wished I had enjoyed it a lot more instead of, worrying about those other things. But I definitely wouldn't change the fact that I went there. Absolutely not. Not one bit. And I kind of say that because the experience that I'm having right now, talking with you guys, and just being able to learn some of the things that we've learned, and kind of speaking to that last question about financial stability. I talked about this earlier. I always kind of wondered, when I'm working here, because obviously we don't, at working for the church, you don't make a lot of money. So that question always kind of pops into your mind. Could I be working somewhere and making more money? Yes, the answer is always yes. So, but I've always kind of found myself to the point, have I ever found myself in a situation where I didn't have money? And the answer is no. And I put that up to the point where God has always provided for me. And he's always, I've come very close where I didn't have any money left, but, putting more, trust in God has definitely brought, me into more financially stable, actually having like a savings account, actually, learning and growing and actually learning about those things. So I definitely wouldn't change a whole lot except for being able to trust God a little bit more and probably not procrastinate as much. It's definitely one of those things that I would probably wish I had changed a little bit more. And kind of talking about this, I just want to put up another question here. This is kind of something in your daily lives, because I think when we're in our careers and we're doing things, what are some things that we can do to kind of develop that godly character? Because I think ultimately that's our true goal. Every day, what do you do? Because when you kind of mentioned this, because when you're older, and I remember I went out to the store and I saw that there was like no toilet paper, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I definitely have enough, and I don't have to worry about it. But where do you kind of show when you're busy and you have all these things where you're worrying about, where you kind of develop your godly character, in the day-to-day things? I'm sorry.
How do you develop a godly character? I think it starts with your foundation. What is your foundation? Because what you take as your foundation is how you kind of carry your day-to-day life. So if you're spending time in God's word, you're studying scriptures, you're having a prayer life, the things that you surround yourself with. I know it sounds silly. This is just a me thing personally. I only listen to Christian music. That's for me because I want to surround myself with only things. Well, I listen to classical too, but like anything that has words is always going to be pointing me back to Christ. And I made that decision early on, and it was basically because I want my mind to always be thinking toward those things. That's how I think that's how we develop it, but part of developing it, I think, is also using the stuff that we learn. It's being like practical application. It's if my neighbor needed toilet paper, for instance, it's me providing them with toilet paper. Sorry, toilet paper's an easy one nowadays, right?
Yeah,
but
for sure.
We actually recently just had that show up on our neighborhood board, and it's like it's a way to help people. It's being Christ's hands and feet. It's here's a hard one. That's kind of it's apologizing when you do something wrong. Okay, that's humbling. There are times that I am not showing a godly character to my children, for instance. That would be a possibility one in my life. I'm frustrated with them. I say something I regret. It's being humble enough to apologize and ask them for their forgiveness, even though they're my children. It doesn't make any difference. I think it's having that foundation, that prayer, the Bible study, the connection, but then it's using it, putting it into practice. Because the more you put it into practice, the more you not try to do it, but like actually go out there and reach out to people. I think the more it actually starts developing it. When you're in the hard times, falling back on it. I have this certain Bible promise that literally whenever I'm in a struggle, I literally just start saying it over and over and over again in my head. And I know I can pretty much conquer anything. So I would actually say also Bible memorization. Words in your head. And it actually kind of comes back to like the whole music goes in my head, because I'll tell you, more often than not, when I'm really struggling too, it's hymns that come into my head. It is actually hymns that I remember listening to that like I will start singing them in my head and stuff like that. Those are the things that kind of help me get through the day-to-day life. The times where I just want to give up, it comes back to Bible verses and music for me. I'm a very music-based person. Music is how God talks to me, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, that's a tough one with me. I think it's one that I might be struggling with somewhat right now. On the one hand, I kind of been struggling with anger recently, and just being like overly tired, and like I said before, kind of burnt out. But on the other hand, not wanting to, kind of create an artificial world for myself in any ways, but I definitely also don't listen to like secular music. I don't watch secular films. Sometimes I find myself maybe watching a little too much comedy on YouTube, but definitely kind of being very careful about the influence of the world on my thinking, on my ideology, on what I value in life. Is it what the world values, or is it things that will have eternal meaning? I think that's kind of where and just bringing everything to the Lord, just kind of realizing that everything has to be brought to Him, and everything has to be made to fit to His will. Now that it's easy to say, and it's a process. Sanctification is a process, but bringing it always to the Lord, and challenging yourself constantly to say, is this what He wants me to do? If not, how can we make that happen?
I think something else that, because we're talking about like, yeah, we need to have this time with God and stuff. There's times where you feel like you're in a desert, like a spiritual desert. And I encourage you to push through that, because, we always have these like spiritual highs, like Elijah did on top of the mountain, but then remember what immediately happens after that. He's fleeing, and it's like, I sit there and I'm like, I'm like, how after you could have just seen that, could you? And then you read about the children of Israel. After you just saw how could, but we do the same thing. And I think that we have to recognize that we're going to have high times spiritually, where you just like, it's right after those week of prayers. Like when you're in week of prayer and it's like this spiritual high. Do you know the hardest weeks on campuses across America are the week after week of prayer? It's because all of a sudden it's kind of like you go down the mountain. And just recognizing that one of the things that we need to do is, be consistent with our devotional, even when we don't get anything out of it. There are going to be times where you're going to read your Bible and you just feel like you're not getting anything out of it. Praying, working through it, but being consistent, because the moment we stop, it is so hard to get back in that habit. And I've seen friends who stopped going to church, and I will tell you, as soon as they stopped going to church, it was hard for them to ever come back, just because they get out of the habit. And there were times where I've been frustrated with the church. This is very vulnerable here. She said I've been frustrated with the church. My husband was a denominational employee for many years. We've been denominationally employed our entire marriages, between either me or him. And I see things that the church does, and I'll be honest, they frustrate me. They kind of make me angry. Okay. But I'm going to tell you, I'm not in my church because of people. I'm in my church because I believe it's where the Bible, they have the message I believe from the Bible. Don't follow people, follow your Bible.
Amen.
And just keep going back to that, because there are going to be people, and I repeatedly have had times where I've wanted to just be like, this is dumb. I don't even know why I'm a part of this. But in the end, I realized it's not because of the people. It's not because of the people. It's because of God. It's because of what His word says. So staying consistent even through all of that. And I'm just going to tell you, I know that a lot of people struggle with the church right now. It doesn't matter which side you're on. Okay. There's sides. We all know it. It's not even an elephant in the room. It's like, it's there. People struggle with the church. But I'm just going to do what I can do. I'm just going to do what God lays at my hand. I tried to get past that and focus on the mission. What is at hand? I try to be kind, love everybody. You know, like I can tell you that I, have friends on both sides of it. You don't need to know which side I'm on. It doesn't actually matter. To me, it doesn't matter, because what matters is, what am I doing with my day-to-day life? What am I doing to make a difference? Am I treating you just as kind as I'm treating somebody else? And I think as a church, we really, I'm not saying we can't stand up for what we don't believe in. That's not what I'm saying. But we also have to recognize that sometimes we just have to move forward, no matter what, and just work on the mission that is at hand. And that's whatever God gives you.
Yeah, I believe that reading plays an important role. About 2 years ago, all my friends left church, and I realized that I wanted to leave church as well. So I talked to my pastor, and he found very accurate words, and he suggested me to read the gospel, to read the books from Matthew to John, to deeply read them. And I found out that Jesus is the best person that I'm able to meet. And then it encourages me to read the Desire of the Ages at the point that that I fell in love with Jesus, and it makes me think that if Jesus loved me that much, then he didn't mind to die, and die in such a way. I think he deserves that I love him over and more than all the things that the world could bring me. And then talking again with the same pastor, he told me that when I feel like I'm loving more sin, that I'm loving sin over Jesus, to try to think about Jesus' sacrifice at least 10 minutes every day, and just keeping in mind then Jesus' love for us is way bigger, that it will encourage us to love him over other things.
Yeah, I think for myself, it's definitely helping others. It's definitely my biggest thing, where if I feel like I'm down, I feel like when I'm helping others, it's definitely something that, encourages me. I think it brings me closer to God. I always come to this part, you do these things you do unto me as well. And it kind of feels like I'm getting closer to God in ways that I'm helping them. And I remember I feel a very practical person. So one of the things that I actually started reading was Counsels on Sabbath School Work, which is I love that book. It has a lot of practical applications, not just for Sabbath school, but for church organization. And I love the idea of organizing things and making things work well. It's just one of those things that if it doesn't work well, I get frustrated, and I want to do the best that I can to help it make it better. So for me, definitely being able to help others come closer to God or experience God. I remember when I kind of made this comment to Pastor Kim, who's our pastor here, and I said, a lot of times I don't remember what the preacher talked about, but I remember his passion for saying it. I remember him actually being there, being passionate about those things. And that to me was the point of being mission minded, and actually seeing God through that person. It wasn't the words that they were saying, but it was his characters, and the way that he said these things, the way that he cared, the way that he actually was there, talking to us and showing us through stories, and making us laugh and making us feel comfortable. I think that's definitely one of the things that we can rely on, not just because a lot of things, sometimes morning devotions aren't always for everyone. I definitely encourage morning devotions. It's definitely something that brought me closer to God, because I remember there were just days, I'm just going to get up early in the morning. I'm just going to pray for a half an hour or something. And I pretty much saw an immediate change in my life, it's hard for some people to say, but definitely doing whatever you can, giving your all in trying to find that relationship with God. Because like Alyssa said, it's not what everyone else is doing. It's definitely a relationship between you and God. It's not, it's not their relationship with God that determines how, your salvation. It's you coming to God and say, hey, God, come into my life, take all my selfishness, these selfish things that I worry about, and take care of them. And so that I can do what I can to let others know of that love that you have for them. And I think taking ourselves out of all of it is definitely important for me, because I always kind of felt that, if there was something wrong and I couldn't personally fix it, I felt like it was my fault. That, but in reality, I could have just let God take care of it and it would have been fine. So it's kind of like all these things that make me angry or something like that. I didn't have to worry about it as much, because God was able to find someone. He could have provided someone to help me figure that out instead of me just doing it myself. And that's where I think helping others and being that kind of person of helping others definitely finds, it's definitely helpful to me, because when I'm helping someone, I feel like God is helping them as well. And that's where I always felt is helping others is definitely important. So I don't know if you guys have any closing comments or anything like that. We've been on for about an hour and 20 minutes, which is awesome. I appreciate it. I know it's pretty late where you guys are. So I just want to say, if you guys have any closing comments, then we can kind of, I think you guys have any closing comments that you guys want to end with, or?
Yeah, we as young people, we appreciate a lot all the time that you that have more experience than us, then all the time that you take for us for counsels and suggestions is really well appreciated. Thank you so much.
And we young people like sharing with you young people. Yeah, my years at BMA were great. I'm glad that we are this huge family, BMA family together. It's a beautiful thing that not only is, I think, our church very special in that respect, that wherever you go, almost everywhere you go in the world, you just pick up that same atmosphere and you just feel like you're at home. But being part of the BMA family as well, it's very special. And when we stand before the throne room, and we're going to be part of that multitude that can't be numbered, and we're going to look around and we're going to see, BMA, 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 or other things that connect us. When you go to Walla Walla, there will also be that next thing that will connect you to other people. I think we have a lot to praise the Lord for. We're very blessed to have that in our lives.
And
I value it.
If I can leave one thing with you, Alan, and anybody else who's watching, is enjoy the journey. Enjoy the journey that God is taking you on, because when I left Bologna Academy, I don't think I would have ever envisioned my life where I am at now. But it was exactly where God wanted me to be. And there's been a lot of winds and turns and times where I questioned, couldn't understand, times that were high, sometimes that were low. But through it all, I tried to just focus in on what he wanted. So enjoy the journey he's about ready to take you on. Stay committed to him, and enjoy it, because God has an amazing work for each and every one of us.
Amen.
Only if you're willing to do it.
Awesome.
Amen.
All right, so I wanna have Alan, if you could have a closing prayer for us, and then we'll kind of wrap this all up. Would you have prayer for us, Alan?
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Let us pray together. Our Father in heaven, sweet Lord, once again, we're so thankful, Father, for all your blessings, Lord. Thank you for this panel. Thank you for the family that we are, how we're connected through your love, Lord. And thank you so much for all the suggestions, all your thoughts, all your love that you share to us through other people, through nature, through your Bible, your word. And thank you so much, Lord, because you created everything, and you may be way too busy, Lord. And even though you take time, you separate time in your agenda to listen to us, your children. Please help us, Lord, to keep the flame on, to don't forget that we're your children, then we have a task. And please encourage us every day, and to keep our eyes fixed on you, Lord, to keep climbing the ladder to heaven. Then we may see that it's way too far to get to the end, but to don't forget that we will get to the end by your hand. Please be your blessing with all the BMA family, all the alumni, and help us, Lord, to be nearer to you day by day. We ask, we pray in the precious, lovely name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. So I just want to thank you guys for joining us. Just so Alyssa, thank you for the past 2 weeks. It's definitely been a blessing having you. We'll definitely be in contact with you, keeping you updated and everything like that for sure. And then Dorothy, you will actually be on with us next week for our Sabbath School live stream. So thank you for that. Hopefully it'll be at a better time than what time is it there? Like 11:30 or something like that. So definitely want to thank you for joining us and helping us out on this. So again, thank you everyone for joining us and all those who were commenting. I want to say thank you to who commented, Michael and Dawson. He was commented a lot. Thank you for all your comments. And thank you, Gwen. She sent her question. She couldn't join us, but she sent those amazing, hard, interesting questions for us. I appreciate that. So again, Alan, thank you for joining us. I want you to have a safe trip going home tomorrow morning. And we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for joining us, guys.